Hello, book lovers. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in to another video. Just let me get organized here. Poetry often goes unnoticed compared to fiction, but sometimes a collection comes along that demands attention. The Autobiography of Death by Kim Hye-soon. Got a digital copy here. I don't have the physical one. So, the Autobiography of Death by Kim Hye-soon is one such book, a haunting, powerful. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Did I just crash the everything there? No, I'm still here. Okay. So it's a haunting, powerful meditation on death, trauma, and the female voice, rooted in real life tragedies like the Sewol Ferry Disaster and the Gwangju Massacre. This collection asks us to confront death head on. So today we'll explore the poetry, the themes, and why Kim Hye-soon is one of Korea's most important literary voices. So, Kim Hye-soon is one of South Korea's most highly regarded poets. Over the course of her long career, she has built a reputation for challenging the conventions of Korean poetry and giving voice to female experiences in a patriarchal society. She has said that poetry is a method of reading the world while living in it, and much of her work reads the world through the lens of feminism, as well as death and trauma. Her poetry often explores the way women's voices have been silenced throughout history and how poetry can serve as a form of resistance. She describes the female voice as one that sits on men's tongues, suggesting that women's language is often filtered or repressed by patriarchal structures. Her work fights against that, reclaiming language for women, for the dead, and for those whose voices have been ignored. So, this collection is called The Autobiography of Death. And as that title suggests, it's a collection that is deeply preoccupied with death, not just as an event, but as a state of being. One fascinating aspect of the collection is its structure. It contains 49 poems, one for each day of the afterlife. In Korean Buddhist tradition, it is believed that the dead journey for 49 days before finding peace. Each poem in this collection represents a day in that liminal space, somewhere between life and death. Even more striking is the use of the second person narration. The poems are addressed to you. But in this case, you refers to death itself. Death here becomes both the narrator and the subject, making this an incredibly immersive but unsettling reading experience. Kim originally thought about titling this book Soul, Book of the Dead, highlighting how deeply tied this collection is to real life tragedies. Though she doesn't name them explicitly, it's clear that much of the book is inspired by two major national traumas: the Sewol Ferry Disaster from 2014, where 304 people, mostly high school students, lost their lives when their ferry sank, and the Gwangju Uprising from 1980, a pro democracy protest that ended in a brutal government massacre. Kim doesn't write about these events in a literal sense. Instead, she evokes the collective grief and trauma that they left behind. So, how does Kim Hye-soon address tragedy? So, rather than writing traditional elegies, Kim uses powerful imagery and metaphor to capture the feeling of grief and loss. One of the most striking poems is I Want to Go to the Island, Day 20, which is believed to reference the Sewol Ferry tragedy. The poem uses the ocean as a black mirror, reflecting both the past and the dead. The narrator's voice becomes a collective voice of the lost, blurring the boundary between the living and the dead. Another poem, Autopsy Day 24, is linked to the Gwangju Massacre. Kim quotes from a psychological study on survivors of Gwangju, showing how trauma lingers long after the event itself. The poem explores the after effects of trauma, the way it reshapes lives, and in this case, how it leads to suicide. Ultimately, the dead in this poem join the chorus of voices in her collection, making the book feel like an ongoing conversation with those who have been lost. Kim's poetry doesn't just describe grief, it tries to force us to inhabit it. So, why does this collection matter? So, poetry often doesn't get quite the same attention as fiction, and the autobiography of death may well have flown under the radar for many readers. But within literary circles, Kim Hye-soon's work is highly celebrated. This collection was long listed for the Best Translated Book Award for Poetry, and Kim's collaboration with translator Don Mi Che has been praised as one of the most significant partnerships in contemporary poetry. The two have worked together for over 15 years, bringing Kim's unique voice to a global audience. The book is a timely book as well. As a post colonial feminist poet, Kim's work resonates with modern political and cultural movements. With feminist book clubs and discussions on gender and trauma growing, the Autobiography of Death is a collection that fits perfectly into contemporary conversations about memory, grief, and resistance. So, who should read this book? If you're someone who usually avoids poetry, this could be the book that changes your mind. Kim's work is profound yet accessible. You don't need to be a poetry expert to understand her themes. It's deeply moving. It forces you to see the world from a different perspective, and it's politically and culturally significant. It ties into ongoing discussions about trauma, feminism, and historical memory. If you're interested in Korean literature, feminist poetry, or books that challenge how we think about life and death, the Autobiography of Death is a must read. So, what do you think? Have you read the Autobiography of Death or any of other works by Kim Hye-soon? Do you think poetry is an effective way to process grief and trauma? So please feel free to leave a comment. And if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it to support the channel, subscribe for more deep dives into Korean literature, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new review. And as always, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.